Right, let's give this stream a few minutes so that no one misses the overall assessment on my thoughts on Bitcoin, the halving. It's probably slightly more than a day before the actual halving event. What you kind of need to know, like I said before, before diving deep into this episode, please take note that all that is being spoken on this episode is non-financial advice. I am not a licensed financial advisor, and whatever that I'm saying is all based on my personal opinion and experience of the market. So let's kind of get on with it. At the moment, guys, we are now trading at $8,522 per Bitcoin, which isn't too bad considering for the fact that we are now clearly in a recessionary environment, a bear market, as they say, with unemployment numbers in the millions, and at the same time, we are having a global shutdown due to the coronavirus pandemic. So, if I was looking at the space, or if I was someone who was interested, I think the key word is how much interest will there be for Bitcoin, right? So, I kind of want to take you through a journey, or at least based on the overall experience that I've had, and speaking to quite a large pool of people, both from within the crypto space and outside of the crypto space, just to kind of get a feel on what's the idea around Bitcoin, or why bother to buy Bitcoin, right? And I think most of the time people are just too biased. They're just too one-sided. They don't want to look at the situation from a holistic point of view. Now, obviously, everybody has an agenda, right? Sometimes the people who represent, for example, people who are big believers in Bitcoin, for example, they have been either working from a technical aspect, or working within a company that is focusing and developing and nurturing the adoption of Bitcoin. Naturally, they'll always be biased, right? Then for the folks who are, for example, investors, I've always been an investor in the space. I've been also trading occasionally when I see the opportunities, or when the timing and indicators are just right. I will definitely be open to putting out some trades. But as an investor at the moment, Bitcoin is truly a very, very good asset class to be holding. Now, discount the volatility that was experienced. If you were someone who, like myself, bought in 2016 when Bitcoin was just $378 per Bitcoin, and if you just held that asset without knowing much about what actually was evolving or revolving around Bitcoin, you would actually make a very significant ROI, despite the fact that yes, it did go up to a high of 19 to 20,000 in December of 2017, and came crashing down rather sadly to the $3,000 to $4,000 level in 2018, right, of December. But everything started to recover this year. Now, Bitcoin halving is also an event where the reward is slashed in half. You're talking about 50% of the existing rewards that the miners will get for creating a new block, from 12.5 BTC to 6.25. Now, what does that all mean, Ryan? Like it sounds like there's going to be less Bitcoins in circulation. Well, it's not really less Bitcoins in circulation, but since there's going to be less Bitcoins coming out into the market every 10 minutes, we would say that the inflationary rate is slowing down. Unlike fiat, or unlike the stimulus package that is being given out to most citizens, especially, let's take the example of some of the first world countries. Let's just say Europe, US, Singapore, where I'm at. In fact, most countries are giving up some sort of stimulus to kind of ease the overall situation, to help people just try to keep up, or at least try to help them out from a certain financial standpoint, where if you are a citizen, you are entitled to some money, either monthly, one-off, or whatever your situation is. If you're a small business owner, you are probably going to get a little bit of help from the government as well. So more money is coming into the system. how this money is spent, obviously it will always go back to the economy in some way or one way or another. For example, you definitely need to eat, you definitely need to buy essentials, you definitely still need to shower, clean yourself up, just maintain personal hygiene. That alone just goes back into the system, right? So you're definitely spending at buying groceries, just the basic necessities, easily $1,000 to $2,000 a month. Don't forget that even if you are able to defer any sort of loan repayment at this point in time, it will always accrue interest based on the principal, even though it's deferred. So that is the situation, guys. You're not gonna get a get out of jail free card where you don't have to pay your loans. It's just a deferment for the short period of time. Whether it's your mortgage or your car loan, I think right now most countries are allowing that and allowing the banks to kind of approve on it and not be too hard on people. So that's the situation. So more money is being printed at the moment. There are some countries that genuinely have reserves because they have been either functioning in a very good industry or they have the natural resource to be exporting it out to the global economy. That way they are actually doing pretty well and they have reserves to support and kind of help out the citizens. Whereas certain countries at the moment, like the US, that is completely broke, right? They have to borrow. The last count was $2 trillion, borrowing $2 trillion from somewhere, and someone has to lend the US government $2 trillion. And yeah, you're going to get yourself into more debt. This will eventually result in more taxes going forward. One way or another, they will have to kind of claw it back to fill up that gap. So back to it right now. If you were someone who was interested in buying Bitcoin, Bitcoin is a awesome hedge at the moment, or it's doing very well to keep up with inflation. For one, I see the US dollar definitely going down in the future. Okay, there is just no way that you could see the US dollar just sustaining the rate that it is, right? So long term, I'm short on US dollars, right? I only see it going weaker, and any country that is working on their reserves and they do not have to print more money during this period of time will do well against the US. Whether it hurts the import or exports, that's something that is really more on the larger scale, and I don't think you have to be too worried from your own standpoint. Now, I do have certain folks from Canada that have been kind of saying that, oh no, the Canadian dollar is going down, it's not keeping up with the US dollars anymore, and that is the truth. I think as long as you identify assets or investable vehicles that will allow you to grow as the economy recovers, that is where we want to put our money at. Simple and straightforward. So right now it is clear that Bitcoin is doing that. So let's go to the charts, guys. Okay, so if you can look at this, I think I always like to look at long-term charts. So this is a monthly Bitcoin chart, right? And when you look at the monthly Bitcoin chart, guys, it is very, very attractive. So as I mentioned, I was in since 2016. So 2016 is here, literally here, guys, when no one was really interested in looking at Bitcoin. Like, what the hell is Bitcoin? To be quite frank, Bitcoin, if you kind of know about it because you were already involved in it in some way, that means you kind of believe the whole story that Fiat, the existing banking system, is failing its people. The dollar, or at least any kind of fiat, because it can continuously be printed in whatever situation, aka financial recession, aka when things are slowing down, you are just able to restock or resupply just like magic because you're just printing it out. You're not removing any US dollars from the system. You're not removing any Singapore dollars from the system or whatever. I'm just talking in general here. You literally don't do that. You're not exchanging, like saying you're making sure that there will be less fiat printed going out in the future. You don't have to do that, right? So as long as this continues, right, and I don't see it changing anytime soon, right, you're gonna have your dollar or your fiat buy more and buy less and less things, so your purchasing power is going down. So you need an asset class that will continue to grow over the years. Discount the volatility, right? And that's why actually when I'm in this episode, right, I'm not here to smash anything with regards to the halving. In fact, I'm actually very bullish overall. Though I'm someone who doesn't clearly hold Bitcoin, because I believe that the altcoin space will provide me with more and a better ROI over time. And I feel that there are companies that are just able to transact better, transact faster, and at the same time, they are equally as secure, if not more secure. So I think the question right now is, where are you at and where do you stand when you watch this episode? Now, like I said, whatever that I'm putting out there is from my personal experience. I've been in the space since 2016. So I just know a little bit more than most, right? But it doesn't mean that I know everything. And right now, my personal thoughts are, if you are completely new and you have never ever heard of a digital currency, you've never invested in stocks, you've never put your money in bonds, mutual funds, any kind of corporate debt or government debt, any kind of ETF, Bitcoin may be a asset class that you want to consider, because buying Bitcoin isn't that difficult now compared to back in the day. I had to go to Chinatown, put in some cash, right? Because I wouldn't know whether I would get my Bitcoin. So me putting in my cash into that Bitcoin ATM machine in a secluded part of a very old Chinatown building to buy my very first Bitcoin was a little exciting, but it felt a little bit scary. So long story short, right now there are large exchanges: Coinbase, Gemini, Kraken, Bitstamp. You have Binance, Huobi. You can buy cryptocurrency relatively easy. And of course, there are local exchanges that are providing you the accessibility to buy in possibly your own currency and buy Bitcoin or whatever cryptocurrency offering that they have in supply. It's quite okay, it's quite good, because nowadays the smaller exchanges tap onto the larger exchanges and they are able to kind of share that liquidity. So it's a good thing. Also, I think the security, where it's easier to secure your wallets these days. Now, I'm not saying that people don't lose their coins, or people don't lose their coins, or they could still potentially get scammed or hacked. This is totally besides the point. These scams, hacks, and everything will always happen. It is just like you losing your wallet or you getting robbed. It will always happen. So the question right now at the moment is, what do I do? Like, if I have cash on hand now, when you have cash on hand at the moment, I think there is an opportunity for us to enter into cryptocurrencies at the moment. I always have believed that I will not leave this space. In fact, if it's anything, it's always advancing and progressing. And I noticed that there are more custodial services, from either small boutique banks to even large exchanges offering custodial services and staking. Now, why is that so? As the overall economy is doing badly, which it is right now, it is a negative interest rate environment. So what does that mean? It is great for you as a borrower, right? If you are planning to buy a home at the moment, you're planning to buy a home, you are actually going to enjoy having very low interest rates, right? That means your amount is you are gonna be paying very little interest on your monthly installments for your home. Okay, if you're obviously looking at starting a business and you're looking for some kind of credit facility, right now is the best time to get a loan, right? So that you can kind of start that business of yours. And of course, naturally, everybody can say, wow, don't you think that taking a loan now is risky, whatever it is? But I think businesses are built, one of the best businesses are always built during a recession, because the sentiment is always very low. Take a look at the existing logistics businesses at the moment, where those who are just providing groceries, delivering groceries, or just doing any kind of delivery at the moment, because the current large carriers or the large players are just so overwhelmed that smaller players are able to emerge. You're talking about very simple connecting wet markets to people, or you're just connecting grocery shopping to people, right? Because sometimes it's just so challenging for one person to go out and buy groceries. Sometimes maybe if you have a large family nucleus, you need just much more, and it's better to just order in. Or maybe your supermarket is just really far away, and so on and so forth. So all these things, right? Businesses have emerged from this situation, and in fact they're actually very profitable. So small businesses are going to either of course go down if they have not been able to plan out their finances. It's a very challenging environment. I'm not blaming you if you are a small business and you're having difficulties, but I'm also saying that if you have a business idea at the moment and you want to dive deep into it, it's not a bad time as well. So borrowing from banks at the moment is not a bad thing, because interest rates environment is going to be low for probably a certain period of time. I just see that it's already happening, right? So for example, if you look at a loan at the moment here in Singapore, if you wanted to get a loan, it is as low as 1.5%. That is really decently lower. And if you're willing to go on a variable, which is Singapore Interbank Offer Rate, right, which is a variable of whatever, either 3 months to, usually it's 3 months. It's very low, guys. It's like less than 1.2%. So think about it. If borrowing is cheap at the moment, borrowing is actually not bad. It's not a bad idea. But of course, naturally, you have to make sure that your financial situation is actually taken care of. It's in a good spot, right? You are still pretty confident that the next 6 to 12 months your job is not affected. That's how you can commit on taking up this facility. Now, obviously, when it comes to investing, it's a totally different thing. Right now, I would say that I personally don't use leverage. I don't trade on margin. I just have never done that, even when I was even though I've been in the space for so long, and I'm definitely familiar with using margin and leverage. I just don't use it because the crypto market is just still very volatile. But as a trader, obviously traders love volatility. Traders love that very fast ROI, right? With very little funds, you can actually make a lot of money. But the reason why I discourage it is that how many people are that disciplined to manage their position sizes and stop losses? Naturally, all these things can be taught, but I would rather focus on the long-term investing within the space that gets me very excited, because the long-term investing is the one that gives you the best ROI. Whereas trading, although it can relatively give you a consistent profit that you can do either weekly, depends, right? For me, I look at trades that can even span for sometimes weeks to even months before I take profit. Those are known as swing trades. But personally, do I so-called day trade and look for shorter time frames where you're looking at the 5 to 15 to 30-minute candles? I don't. I look at the longer time frames, and the longer time frames are just easier for me because I have 2 kids. That's just my personal preference, and that's why investing is still a very big part of my portfolio, where I look at cornerstone pieces within my portfolio and I gradually build it. So I would kind of want to share that with you guys, where if you are someone new, you're really having this cash on hand, or you don't really need to use the government stimulus to sustain your existing liabilities or your financial your basic essentials at home, the government stimulus would be very well used in looking at certain things. Now, like I said, take note, always assess your risk. If you are completely new, you are not even sure what you're looking at right now. For example, like you're looking at the chart. Right now you're looking at the chart of BTC, but you have no idea what's a good entry, what's not a good entry. All these things, right? We do teach and provide that information within Protégé Pro Group. But take note, whatever I'm saying is also for people who already understand the space to a certain extent. They have been in the markets for a certain period of time. So that's why they understand where I'm coming from. So let's get to it. So at the moment, right, I feel that Bitcoin will find support at least $7,000, even though it is obviously coming down, right? It is in a downward channel at the moment. But at some point, I do believe that it will recover and it will go past whatever. I believe that the first mark that it has to clear and sit comfortably has to be $10,000. It's just a psychological barrier and has been that psychological barrier for some time. If you look at the wicks, right? You just look at the wicks and all the sell downs that have occurred. You had this very parabolic rise for practically no reason, guys. That is the problem where till now, I be very frank with you. Why does Bitcoin have to be above $10,000? Like right now, Ryan, why does Bitcoin have to be $10,000? Like why is $10,000 a thing? You know, and to be frank, even if the halving, right, even if the halving produces 50% less Bitcoin, what does it really mean to you? You don't, as a consumer, as an investor like myself, I don't really care, right? As long as I'm making money and this asset class, that if I'm holding it, does well over time, that's all I care about. Because when I decide to sell it, right, when I decide to exit my position, I can buy what I want. You see, that is the most important thing to me, and that's kind of like where I see it as someone who's looking at the space. Now, if I was to talk about altcoins, that will be a separate episode, but I don't want to talk about altcoins because there's just too many altcoins to look at, and I don't want to confuse you. Let's focus on Bitcoin. Right now, Bitcoin, there are also the potential for custodial services, which brings me back to one of my points that I mentioned early on in this episode. When there are custodial services that are providing a percentage, so remember the negative interest rate environment I mentioned? So if you are in a negative interest rate environment and you are someone who's holding cash, that is bad for you. Whether you care about it or not, I think it's really a personal preference. But let's just put it this way. Would you like to put your money in a bank and get zero? Okay? Now the next thing is, what if you had a fall below fee being charged because you were having less than the minimum requirement? Which of course, there are some people who are and sadly fall in that category. We're talking about obviously either a monthly fee, a quarterly fee, or some sort like that, a fall below fee, right? That really sucks. So, but keeping your money at home can and cannot be a safe place. It can be, it can also not be a safe place as well. So, where does one put their money? Unfortunately, they still have to put it with the banks. And you'd be surprised that there are instances where the banks might actually need you to be paying some fees so that you can have your money placed with them. Because I'm the national bank, or I'm a licensed bank, I will want to charge you a fee for keeping money with us. So you'll be thinking, okay, so not only am I not making any money, or at least I was supposed to at least get some kind of interest per annum, right, which is already very measly around the world, right? When you're talking about first world countries, it's usually very measly. And then you are, of course, having to kind of fight the financial situation at the moment, which is one of the toughest. In fact, it's one of the historic, most painful bear markets that we're going to be experiencing at least for the next 2 to 3 years before we start recovering. You don't want to be having to deal with all this kind of stuff. So you got to start looking out for stuff that could potentially at least give you some kind of passive income. So there are institutions that are providing you a staking return, meaning that if you had some cryptocurrency of some sort, so let's just assume Bitcoin, apparently there are some institutions that are giving 3% per annum on Bitcoin. But don't forget that there is the volatility that you have to deal with. Oh, Ryan, okay, what is the volatility that you are referring to? Meaning to say that if you had bought Bitcoin at $10,000 and Bitcoin went to $7,000, you have lost 30%. Meaning to say that unfortunately, even if you're going to make 3% on the Bitcoins that you bought at 10,000, you are still having a net loss for that year of up to 27%, because your Bitcoin just dropped 30%. That is the volatility that you have to deal with, which isn't a very good thing, because you don't want to see. And also it boils down to the use cases. You buy Bitcoin, right, with the intention of maybe using it maybe 1 week later. The next thing, Bitcoin does something like what it just did just a few hours ago, and you'll be like, what the hell? It dropped $2,000 per Bitcoin, and and that's quite a significant amount to some people, and you are buying lesser of whatever stuff. So unfortunately, you can't use it as a currency. Hence, all the stable coins are now out in the market, right? Where if you don't feel comfortable holding Bitcoin and not willing to accept the volatility, there is always a stable coin option. Simple as that. I think it's very simple economics 101. And like I said, I am kind of happy that I don't see that much optimism or over optimism. It's really silly, right, to kind of be too overly hyped up about the Bitcoin halving. I feel that, come on man, guys, you have to be more mature, right? If you were someone, okay, now the thing is, right, the reason why these people are so extremely happy, right, is that obviously they bought very, very cheap. When they bought very, very cheap, they will always be chanting very positive things. Now, I don't have to be sour because I bought a lot of other things cheap. If I was to make a video of how many times I bought something cheap, everybody will just, unsubscribe, because I've just made so many good trades throughout the 4 years. And the reason is just very simple, because I am just looking at it. I have to also be fair to people who don't have that opportunity to be looking at the market consistently as I do. You see? So when these people who are tweeting their overly enthusiastic tweets, and some of these Twitter folks, right, they are actually very influential. So you never know when is the right time to buy until you have at least some kind of experience. Maybe you have bought some stocks before, you know how to look at some charts. From there, when you look at buying BTC, you'll be like, oh, okay, it looks a little bit off at the moment. I feel that probably there's a little bit more downside. Let me adjust my portion, and after looking at my finances, I feel okay, I'm good to maybe put $1,000 into Bitcoin. Then you do that, right? And you don't look at touching it until you make a decent ROI. And then that ROI is your financial objective for that portion within your portfolio. Now, obviously, I don't want Bitcoin or cryptocurrency or any kind of altcoin to be the one all be all asset. In fact, right now, I feel that the stock market should present opportunities in the next 6 to 9 months when quarterly earnings are announced. Because to me, when I see the S&P and I look at the Dow Jones and the Nasdaq recovering, I think there is certain plays involved at the moment that are not very favorable, though I don't have the direct information. But I just feel that, look, what is there really to look forward to? Are you going to tell me that the so-called bull run is just going to continue? Now, I don't believe that, because if you're having everything halted, you're having airlines going bankrupt, guys. There are companies, oil traders, that have already filed for bankruptcy. We're talking about they are no longer going to be in business, okay? These are all anywhere from billions to even trillions of dollars being lost overnight because of what happened in oil. And there are always repercussions to refiners. Anywhere from the upstream to downstream are all affected. So you're trying to tell me that you're now seeing that recovery in the S&P and in the Dow is sustainable. I think you're a little bit loony, I would say, or a little bit disillusioned, and maybe you're just not very well versed. But have a look at what's happening around. Like I said, smaller countries to smaller towns, economies are not going to be that badly hit. Why is that so? Because the way they manage their business is very simple. They usually like to own the property. They don't like to rent. They actually own the property because it's just cheap. From then they start up a small business. They bring in they bring in stock that is good enough for the town or the people within the area. So they naturally have very little debt. Whereas if you're in the big city, you're always looking at building more franchises, more stalls. Want to make sure that you keep expanding. You from locally, you want to go regional, you want to go global. And when you are planning to grow too fast, what happens? You need credit facilities because your revenue is not coming in fast enough to make payments. Sometimes those payments get left behind or delayed or late. But you know what? Banks are always very willing, especially when the economy is good, to let you fly the kite and go a little bit higher. But right now, if everyone's defaulting, why on earth would anything be any different? How can companies continue to stay profitable? In fact, I see a large part, getting retrenched, getting restructured, and also a lot of people have to be reskilled, right? Because perhaps maybe that industry is no longer, that department or that particular position becomes obsolete overnight. Now, I wouldn't know every single thing or what industry in particular, but you're going to see all these things start to emerge. And it's only a matter of time that the people will know about it. Now, obviously, not everyone is watching my channel. I'm not a big channel. But then again, when bigger channels are starting to report and identify the gaps and how broken the system is, you're gonna get people who are affected are gonna look for other alternatives. See, so that's why I left banking. It's not banking won't. I mean, banking doesn't mean that it won't always be around. Bankers will always be around. People who are needing facilities, people who are looking at investing in the financial markets will always be around. But I felt why I left because I wanted to provide information unbiased. I always wanted to be able to speak freely and not be tied down by a license or certain regulatory requirements that couldn't allow me to speak freely about buying and not buying something. I didn't want to be in that position. So I have been self-employed for already 5 years now, and I'm really enjoying the whole process. And in fact, I've made more money in doing this than when I was in as a banker. It's actually very fulfilling, guys. So that's the thing. You got to find your own groove, right? So I think right now, when I look at the overall global economy, and when I say this, I say this with all sincerity. I will be building, right, a portfolio of stocks in the next 2 to 3 years, which I could not do because I actually stepped in during the subprime. I stepped into banking during subprime back in 2008, right? That was my first time stepping into the bank, working for the banks. And for 6.5 years, I felt that the economy was doing pretty well. It was recovering. And will the economy recover again? It definitely will, because we are not gonna just sit down and die. We definitely want to push forward. Yes, there's gonna be a lot of government support. Not all the airlines that you know and care about or love are gonna be around. In fact, it's gonna completely be consolidated. Not everyone's gonna survive. So those that have the best performance, customer base, the best customer experience, all these things, these airlines will still be around. So perhaps maybe looking at certain airline stocks are going to be pretty favorable. Personally, I'm letting you know right now, I'm going to be building a position in Singapore International Airlines, which is SQ. I'm definitely going to build a position, guys. There's no way that right now with the $4.40, yes, because there was a rights issue, 3-2. Now this is, like I said, if you can't invest in the Singapore Airlines, you don't have to. I'm just giving you an example. So I'll be building a position. Maybe you're looking at, I don't know, American Airlines or any other kind of airlines that you are looking at. You can do so as well. So all these things are factors, and these kind of opportunities are literally 10 years or more. You have this kind of opportunity. Because most of the folks who have bought equities, dollar cost averaging, just buying up because nobody knows when's the bottom, right? But right now, it may seem bad. It may seem like no one wants to buy, but in fact, this is the best time to buy. And crypto has really taught me that. If I didn't continue building my portfolio during 2018 and 2019, I will be one of those folks that will be very sour because I didn't continue buying, or I didn't continue dollar cost averaging into my position. But because of dollar cost averaging, which is a very, very simple strategy, you don't have to look at charts all the time. You just diligently just buy a little bit every week to every month, right? And we're talking about just minimal amounts, right? And building a position over time, you'd be very surprised how well you do after looking at your portfolio after a 5 to 10 year time frame. It is really very exciting, guys. And don't forget that companies that are able to continue to pay dividends, for example, real estate investment trusts, or obviously if you want to look at exchange traded funds that pay you a certain percentage every month, even if it's 5% per annum, okay, it is still better than you putting the money in the bank. Don't forget that you will also enjoy capital appreciation on your position apart from the dividend when the economy turns. And obviously, if you made the right choices for the stocks, exchange traded funds are obviously very balanced and diversified. You just made the right choices during this time, and being educated and savvy and buying the right things, you'd be surprised after this whole thing is over, which it will, right? Which it will. You're going to see your portfolio start to grow. You start to see your money grow. And it worked for you during this period of time while you were going out there doing your own thing. Okay? Now, does everyone have to be an investor? No. If you have a great idea at the moment, I would rather you focus and try to build that great idea, obviously on as low leverage as possible, right? and within your means, right? As long as you have as long as you have an idea that you think will work out during this period of time, start testing it out. Don't wait until the whole market starts to recover and there are more players who happen to emerge within your industry who had your idea and executed on it, which is another thing, right? Knowing a lot of stuff but not executing on it is going to be the downfall of everyone. Haven't you had the friend that always says that, oh wow, I had this idea, and in the end, you see, here is where Lyft is, here is where Uber is. I had that idea. I'm like, okay, you didn't execute, my friend. Even if you were the first, but you didn't execute, unfortunately, you don't make the money. So anyway, guys, like I said, I think the most important thing, you want to be in the market at the moment. You don't want to keep money at the sidelines and not be participating in one of the most potentially profitable times in history. Really, it's really very profitable. So you got to start building a position. All right, so yes, so Will, I saw your question. You know what? I don't give what it's gonna do in 24 hours. But in the long run, I know that BTC is gonna continue to trend upwards. I know that the whole altcoin market is gonna do well in the next 4 to 5 years. It's pretty much sure. It's just a matter of when it does that. I'm just having that kind of long-term time frame as always, and I never give short-term any kind of short-term predictions. Right? Thank you very much. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great weekend. See you.